Salut les gens, ici Pierre pour une nouvelle vidéo. On se retrouve aujourd'hui sur ce Stanley Parable, première vidéo et sur YouTube. Donc j'ai choisi ce jeu pour une première vidéo car il est vraiment j'ai trouvé très drôle parce que il est, comment expliquer, il a plein d'à côté si vous voulez. En fait, il y a le jeu et déjà sa description, vous pouvez choisir de suivre l'histoire ou pas. Vous pouvez faire ça ou pas, voilà, c'est vraiment, on fait quasiment ce qu'on veut. En fait, il y a un narrateur qui est censé, je suis désolé, je raconte un peu comme ça. Il y a un narrateur qui est censé raconter une histoire. Donc nous, en général, on suit l'histoire. Mais on n'est pas obligé ici. Donc je vous propose de commencer à jouer. Donc je vais cacher le... Donc en bref, il y a le narrateur donc, qui peut parfois péter un câble, vous transporter n'importe où. Franchement, des fois il est bizarre. Donc je m'excuse pour la qualité du micro.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-making, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy.
Et en plus, Stanley.
And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Voilà, donc là c'est moi qui joue. Donc je vous rassure, là c'était en anglais, donc le gars va toujours parler en anglais, mais les sous-titres aussi étaient en anglais. C'est juste l'intro, après c'est en français, je vous rassure, parce que sinon ce serait chaud à lire. Donc Stanley Parable, en fait, on a le choix de suivre. Déjà le temps passe vachement vite, je trouve. On a le choix de suivre ou non l'histoire. Donc en gros ici, je peux refermer la porte tout simplement et attendre. Voilà, et ce serait la fin. En fait, on recommence beaucoup de temps le jeu et c'est ça qui fait qu'en fait il est drôle, parce qu'il y a des centaines et des centaines de fins, je pense qu'il n'y en a pas, parce qu'en prenant certains choix et voilà.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Peut-être n'avait-il pas reçu de service. Bon, bref, en gros, je vais vous lire les sous-titres et tout, c'est je m'excuse pour la qualité du micro, j'essaye de pas dire des mots qui le font bugger. J'essaye de dire les vraiment tout petits parce que ça fait des gros bruits dégueulasses. Bon, de toute façon, voilà. Si vous avez des idées de micro qui sont vraiment bonnes, c'est comme ça. Oh, c'est comme ça, des trucs. Ouais, donc toutes les portes sont fermées à clé. Donc en gros ce pauvre est tout seul, perdu. Donc on va avancer.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Donc je vous propose pour la première fois de suivre l'histoire. On va suivre ce qu'il dit. On va bien voir. Et après on va l'emmerder. Après on va bien l'embêter là, on va...
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Mais comme ça en fait on a un peu peur qu'il y ait un screamer, mais en fait non, pas du tout hein. C'est pas du tout un jeu d'horreur rempli de...
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this, what dark secret was being held from him. What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
Et bien entendu, Stanley n'avait strictement aucun moyen de savoir ça. Oh, c'est l'affiche du jeu, le tableau central. Bon, 2, 8, 4, 5, c'est ça.
Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs. Trying to input anything on the device was useless, since he could never possibly know that the combination was 2845.
En gros, il t'explique qu'il le sait pas, mais si tu tapes pas ça dessus,
2845.
voilà, il pète un câble. 2, 8, 4, 5. Oups, c'est pas ça. Non, allez. Alors...
Forgot, but it turns out that the panel's emergency override kicked in, and the door just opened all by itself. And Stanley got the hell along with the story. Well, whoop-de-doo.
Là, sa progression dans l'histoire. Donc en gros, on essaye de suivre l'histoire et de faire un peu... que ce soit un peu drôle. Ah, je suis désolé pour les accros, mais comme j'ai un PC portable... Oula. Donc loading. Oui, donc comme je disais, vu que j'ai un PC portable, je tourne sur le pad, j'ai pas de... Oui, donc s'il y en a qui ont un micro qui marche vraiment bien, parce que moi c'est la petite qualité, c'est pas, j'avais pas de gros budget. S'il y en a qui ont vraiment un bon micro à proposer, je suis preneur. Normalement, d'ici une semaine...
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
Qui ne resterait pas sans réponse. Non, moi j'ai pas très envie. C'est pas très rassurant. Oui, donc, je vous répète encore une fois, c'est...
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
On pouvait voir centre de contrôle mental. Non, je m'en vais. Non, je déconne. Non, mais oui, donc c'est vraiment un jeu qui est censé être très très marrant. Non, on va y aller, on va suivre l'histoire. On va suivre. C'est quand même vachement peur de voir un screamer, quoi.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Regardez dans cet endroit. Oula, vaudrait mieux pas que Stanley tombe dans le vide, le petit. Donc c'est un jeu qu'on trouve à pas cher sur Steam, je pense. Parce que moi c'est un ami qui me l'avait donné, donc voilà, c'est un ami qui me l'a donné. Je suis sûr que ça a allumé tous les écrans.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
J'aime les voir se toucher.
Voilà. Sorti. « 248 nous. Non, 247. Ouais, en fait, non, on est juste une armoire. Bon, bah, on va appeler sur
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly? No. He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never! It was unthinkable, wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world?
Ouais, donc en gros, il se pète son film, lui.
But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
À tout jamais.
Classe, n'empêche. Même dans ma chambre. Non, je déconne. Non, mais voilà. Oui, donc vous allez peut-être me dire, pour ma première vidéo, j'aurais mieux fait de choisir un jeu un peu plus connu. Voilà. Bah déjà qu'il est moyen, bah ça va, il y a pire. Ça doit être là. Non, c'est pas là. Console disable. Ah, et puis comme je suis une daube en anglais, j'y comprends rien. Oula. C'est par où? C'est peut-être par là, non? On se ferme la clé. Cet enfoiré veut pas nous le dire. Ah, facility. Putain, j'étais juste à côté de tout à l'heure. My control idle. Oui, donc voilà, donc si vous avez des commentaires à faire, des idées et tout ça pour améliorer...
And when at last he found the source of the room's power, he knew it was his duty, his obligation, to put an end to this horrible place and to everything it stood for.
Nous allons l'éteindre.
On est mort! Ça y est! On est décédé! Non, je rigole. Non, mais voilà, non, mais c'est vraiment sympathique de faire une première vidéo, une première fois.
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over?
Nous sommes...
Yes! He had won!
J'avais gagné.
He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door.
Et puis le mec il rentre juste à la fin.
Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin,
Non, mais
the
voilà,
feeling
moi,
of
ça me fait plaisir de
liberation,
faire une première
the
vidéo.
immense possibility
Je
of the
sais que
new
je vais faire
path
beaucoup
before
d'erreurs.
him.
Et,
This was exactly
je
the
m'en
way,
excuse. J'aimerais
right
vraiment que dans
now,
les commentaires,
that
vous,
things
en
were
bas,
meant to
vous me
happen.
laissiez une note,
That Stanley was happy.
vous me laissiez un commentaire pour me dire comment m'améliorer. Parce que ça me ferait beaucoup plaisir. Bon, et bah l'histoire est terminée. Hein, donc un jeu qui se finit en 30 secondes. Voilà, ça fait peut-être plus 5-10 minutes. Je sais pas trop à combien on en est vidéo. Là, ce que je vais vous proposer, on va recommencer. Mais on va bien embêter le narrateur. Allez, c'est parti. On va essayer de l'embêter.
Just a step through this door, Stanley thought to himself, that's all I need. If I can make it through this door, I can make it through the hall.
Je pense que vous avez compris. En gros, il est enfermé dans un bâtiment, il est jamais toujours.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Ouais, non mais genre l'autre. Oui, je veux bien admirer le salon.
Ah, yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
Non, moi je me casse. À quoi il devait rester là, je m'en vais.
But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
En fait, on va faire exactement tout le contraire de ce qu'il va lire. Donc là, il nous a dit d'aller à gauche, bah, ça doit venir. Non, on va aller tout droit. Voilà.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Il a encore été renvoyé. L'autre qui te troll, c'est... Qui te troll.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her. This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself, to put your work aside, to let her back into your life. She's been waiting.
Donc apparemment il aurait une copine carrément. Elle t'a attendu.
That's her, Stanley. You need to be the one to do this, to reach out to her. If you can truly place your faith in another.
Donc en gros c'est ça, il a une meuf quoi. Ouais bah c'est sympa. C'est tant mieux pour lui. Même avec la vie de bureau qu'il a.
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven.
En gros, t'as fait des gâteaux quoi.
Okay, there we go. All right, now, I want you to come in and tell me all about
your day.
Gotcha! Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here.
Non mais il nous a trollé quoi. Le mec il a fait non je déconne, vas-y. De toute façon, qui voudrait sortir avec toi? T'as vu ta gueule? T'as vu ton boulot? Non mais sérieusement quoi. L'autre, en plus il s'est bien moqué quoi.
This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley. Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence. Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told to do. Now he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life.
On va essayer d'appuyer sur les mauvais boutons. Ou pas appuyer du tout, tiens. On va pas appuyer, on va voir ce qui se passe, quoi. Ça va? C'est puis là, tu regardes en mode Terminator, tu bouge sa tête en mode Terminator.
But in his mind, in his mind he can go on fantastic
Je suis obligé
adventures.
d'appuyer, en fait.
From behind his desk,
jamais.
Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of
déjà,
new
c'est
lands.
complètement
It
différent
was
de l'autre,
wonderful.
où il est,
And each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it
où il
would
est
ever
libre.
happen to him.
Il est chez lui, c'est...
And so he began to fantasize about his own job. First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought excited him terribly. So he went further. He imagined that he came to two open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold.
Pour voir un peu de fin et tout ça, voilà.
As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths and destinations.
Voilà, quoi,
Down
ça,
one path lay an
ça va.
enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable.
The Stanley Parable.
It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he relived it again, and then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time. But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets which life is the real one.
Compliqué à comprendre.
And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it. You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley. We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must. Perhaps, well, maybe this time he'll see. Maybe this time.
Oh.
And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button.
Veuillez mourir.
And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried.
C'est veuillez mourir, quoi. En gros, ouais, c'était une fin. Il a expliqué vite fait le jeu comme ça, et ouais, bah, c'était une différente fin. Bon, et puis ça recommence au début. Bon, voilà. Expliquer vite fait n'empêche le but de Stanley Parable, ça recommence, ça recommence, ça recommence. Et en fait, comme ça, tu sens pas mal. Ouais, non, mais j'ai bien vu. Non, en fait, j'avais même pas remarqué qu'au fur et à mesure, ça s'est transformé en son bureau. Donc, je suis désolé, vous allez avoir un gros plan, long moment. Bon, bah tant pis. Donc, bon, bah voilà, c'était The Stanley Parable. Et puis, je vous dis à la prochaine vidéo. Et ciao!